television series for Life was also obviously inspired by your story, but then the book is much more accurate. It's basically how it went down in your words, and it's actually quite insightful. Can you just talk to us about the book a little bit? In terms of, I don't want to say what inspired it because it's obvious, but in terms of the process of writing the book, and how you felt, through that process.
It was a tedious process, but the book was, especially after the TV show, the book was a necessity, because I'm a firm believer when it comes down to things related to government, that there is an automatic right to know, for the people. And there's some things that the government had done to me, in the system, and taxpayers, the average taxpayer, supported what the government did through their tax dollars, not knowing what was really happening. So they have a right to know. And so this book, one of the reasons why I needed to write this book was because I wanted the public to know the absolute truth. I wanted them to understand, what really happened, how it happened. They needed to know that although I was, an individual that was wrongly accused and sent to prison for something I didn't do, I wasn't a perfect person. I was like every human being, every man born of a woman. I had those areas in my personality and some of the decisions that I made that were flawed. And some of that was brought on by my success at such a young age. I was arrogant. I was proud of what I had accomplished. I did not, and in that arrogance, and it wasn't an arrogance in a negative way. It was an arrogance that blinded me to certain realities of life. I made decisions that I shouldn't have made. I made because I believed, in that arrogance, that you know if I walked a straight line, nothing else around me mattered. Um, if I walked a straight line, it didn't matter who I dealt with, who I talked to, who my friends were. Um, and that arrogance blinded me to the fact that, you know, some of those things made me vulnerable. And as a young black successful entrepreneur, it not only made me vulnerable, but it made me a target. So, hindsight is always 2020, and I'm a very, very wise man today. So while I would not have changed anything, um, I think the book is important, uh, so that people can see what it means to be human, and what it means to step back from some of those mistakes and stand up, not only as a man, but for the things that are right, not only for yourself, but for other people. And to be able to willing to risk your life for that, for the betterment of mankind. So it's a road that everybody needs to understand, um, um, how to travel, because we all have our stories, and we all have our pains, our conflicts, our challenges in life. And we all look for ways to move past that. We all look for answers. And I think this book is not only, a book of truth, but it's a book full of answers when it comes down to the journey that all human beings take in this life, in terms of happiness, and looking towards happiness, and looking towards success.
Thanks for that. And just talking about sort of the therapeutic process through, you probably went through writing the book. I watched an interview where you'd mentioned that you, whilst on the set of For Life, you they'd actually locked the cells and locked you
Yes.
in the cell on set, and that completely obviously sent you to a place that you didn't want to be. But then you
Yes.
also mentioned the importance of talking about what you've been through, and how you didn't really realize that until you went through the process of the production of that series. Did you feel, was there a point during, whilst you were writing the book, that you kind of felt a sort of release, of emotions, good or bad, what, based on what you were writing, and based on what you were speaking, in terms of the audible version?
You know, one of the things about about Earth's living color representation of hell is that when you live in it, when you're literally living in hell, and everyone around you is living that same experience, you're no longer in hell. You're only in hell when you're outside looking in. So for me, when I was living in hell, I was so engulfed in survival that I never contemplated the pain that went along with it. And so I got out of prison with my feet still running. Because if you think about what I said before, I went straight into school pursuing a law degree and then spent another 9 years fighting to get the law license. And so I never had time to reflect on my own pain. I spent so much time fighting for myself. It was type of a second nature. And I never talked about it. I mean, it was something, not only did I not talk about it, our family didn't talk about it. We didn't sit down and, and kind of inquire with each other about the destruction that we all experienced individually and as a family. We were so happy that it was over and so engulfed in making things better for the family and all of us moving forward that we let that lay on the floor. But it's something that never goes away. And so, when I was doing the series, the show forced me to engage those experiences as a third person, to look back at what I was going through and to now have the time to reflect on it, where I didn't have the time back then. And so the therapy came in, my ability to grieve for myself, to look back and kind of grieve for that person, that 20-something-year-old kid that spent 7.5 years in prison, doing it alone. So yes, it was a very therapeutic process in making the TV show, and obviously the book, but the TV show came first. It was more therapeutic there, specifically because I never had to address what I went through with inside myself until I was forced to engage it making the show.